Whether you're looking for a convenient refresher course, or a way to earn your Pragmatic certification at your own speed, or the chance to take a Pragmatic course from your specific corner of the world, then Foundations on Demand is the solution you need. Get the same great content, tools, and templates our Foundations course is famous for in a flexible and easy-to-use online learning platform. Learn the skills you need to build and market products people want to buy. And earn your Pragmatic Institute certification anywhere, anytime. No more travel worries, no more time zone issues, just truly great training. Experience the new way of training with Foundations on Demand from Pragmatic Institute. Visit pragmaticinstitute.com/foundations to learn more.
Hello, and welcome to the Pragmatic Product Chat series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Kalogeris, Vice President of Marketing and Product Strategy at Pragmatic Institute, and your host for this episode. What makes good content, right? We all know that content is queen or king, but what is it that really makes it stand out, makes content really strong, and then how do we get it in front of the right people? These are questions that all of us struggle with and try to tackle every single day. So today, to help us tackle these questions and so many more, I'm very excited to have Brett McGrath on, who is VP of Marketing at The Juice and the host of Modern Day Marketer. So there's a little bit of extra pressure as we have another podcast host on. But welcome, Brett.
Thank you, Rebecca. Excited to be here and talking about my favorite topic, which is content. So there's a lot that we can dive into, I'm sure, but hopefully you'll guide us there and we'll get in and have some fun conversation.
Absolutely. Two people who love talking about content. How can it go wrong? But first, Brett, a little bit for our listeners. Can you give us a little bit background on Brett, how you got where you are, why you're so passionate about content, and a little bit about The Juice?
Sure. So I'm a career B2B marketer. I've probably worked in every marketing function imaginable across every type of B2B SaaS business in a lot of different verticals. And so I started my career marketing to marketers and really rode a rocket ship of a company that when I joined went from was hypergrowth to publicly traded to being acquired by one of the biggest software companies in the world. So I started my career with that experience and I thought that was normal, realized quickly it wasn't normal. And so ever since then, I've been chasing that success in a way and working more or less in small to medium-sized businesses, doing whatever I can to kind of build up the marketing function. And the way I've approached that has shifted as the years have gone by, and we can get into that and talk a little bit more. But at The Juice, this is the earliest stage company I've ever joined. I can give a shout out to our CEO and co-founder, Jonathan, who sold me on the vision of what we were doing. And I joined the business as employee number 2 before we even had a product. So I've been working at The Juice since January 4th of 2021. Really, in my main role at The Juice is I'm the leader of marketing, but at this stage of the business, I'm really focused on our brand, building our brand, having conversations with other marketers, and most importantly, since The Juice is a content discovery and distribution platform, we have to be really good at content. So I spend a lot of time thinking about what the modern day marketer cares about and creating content around that individual.
Nice. And I think you bring up a good point. I'm not going to guess your age, but both, at least when I started, right, content wasn't a very big focus of the classic marketing department, right? So in my early career, when I had a content aspect of it, it was new, it was fresh, and it was like you got all the early rewards that they talk about with content. You get good search, you get good credibility, you bring people in, you have this communication with them that's not just about, moving them to the next funnel. And it seemed hard at the time because we didn't have as many tools or ways to really measure things, but I also had so much less competition in this space. Now, it doesn't matter, it seems, if you sell toilet paper or if you sell training and everything in between, everybody's got a really like a strong focus and investment in content. So that means that you're up against not only just your competitors, but often people selling entirely different products, but to that same space. And you've got to try to now make your content really shine in that space. And it's a whole different level of challenge. So let's talk a little bit about sort of what your process for making content that really stands out.
Yeah, so I think it's shifted a little bit over the years, and I think probably asked me this question, 5 to 7 years ago. It was really focused on kind of the how can I create content that fits into this whole idea of inbound that we're all obsessed with as marketers. So how do I make sure that I'm have the right keywords? My blogs are SEO optimized. So when someone goes to Google and they're searching for something that applies to them or where we want to show up, our articles are there and they're relevant and people can fall on them. And I'm not saying like the inbound methodology is expired or stale. It's not. Marketers from all over the world practice, keyword optimized blog posts, apply that, have their own strategies, have SEO strategies. And I think this is great. I think for me, I don't lead with that at this point, especially, and I think this has been a early stage learning for me at this business. You think about I think the Scott Brinker MarTech landscape infographic that from 2022, I was just looking at it. If you zoom all the way out, there's, more companies than ever before. Everyone looks like a small dot on his infographic, and every one of those dots has people doing content and they're all playing that game. So there's competition when you're playing that game. And I think for me in my process, what I always try to do is how can I differentiate? How can I write? How can I create podcast episodes? How can I create videos that are going to be different than what everyone is used to and about? And I think the biggest thing that I've learned about my content and what's worked and what hasn't, what works is when I'm writing from the perspective of myself and my experiences. And I'm not thinking so much about how many keywords I can fit in that blog post. It's more, let me write long form content around things and topics that I know the people on the other end care about and want to learn about. Let me be a little vulnerable. Let me structure the content in a way that is easy to not only find reach, but resonate with members. And just the way I've always gone about it is let's try to find a hero. Who is the person we're writing for? And let's not overgeneralize. And let's not say, okay, all marketers in B2B, this is for you. Because quite frankly, I think when we do that, you lose a little bit. It becomes a little generic. And when your message is generic, instead of being for everyone, it really becomes, it turns into a piece of content for no one. So for me, specificity has always been really a key trait, building that hero and explaining that hero. And then also for me is being as real and genuine and authentic as I possibly can be. If I'm writing a blog post and I'm not having a great day, I might talk about that in my post and try to relate it to something that I'm trying to convey from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, and I really like that. I think in some ways in our current roles, we have some similarities where the people we're talking to also are a lot like us, right? But that is not true for us, either one of us in our entire careers, right? So everyone could be like, oh, it must be easy because you're writing to people who are like you and who care about the same things. And it is delightful, I'm not going to lie. But it is not the only way to know your hero and to know your audience and to make sure you're doing it direct, right? That is, I think, one of the gifts of a good marketer is to be able to understand and write to and connect with an audience, even if that audience doesn't look like them natively. But I think it's also really important so that you don't have generic, buzzword optimized content.
Yeah. So before I jumped back into marketing to marketers, the last stop I was at was a product that was for K-12 education. Now, I have teachers in my family, but I have never been a teacher, nor do I try to be one. So what I did in my process was let me find individuals in our customer base, people that we want to be our customers. And let me see if I can get them, have some questions, do some deep discovery and try to understand their pain points and try to understand what gets them out of bed in the morning, why they love doing their job, and try to unearth all of those themes and topics. And then, if you do this, and I did this back at the Juice too, because marketing had changed so much since I had been in it from a marketer's perspective, marketing to marketer's perspective. And I would not be where I am today with our content and content strategy if I didn't take a step back at first and say, all right, let me not just go publish and produce, but let me take a step back and let me start listening. Let me find the people. Let me have conversations. Let me do discovery. And when you do this and make this a part of your day-to-day, and my goal every week is like, I want to talk to a new marketer. Who's a stranger. I don't know them, but I want to do that every week. The more I've done that, the more notes, the more understanding learnings I get. And then I synthesize those notes out and begin to pull themes. And those themes really are the catalyst for the content that we're creating.
It's a really good point too, because we do the same thing. Like, yes, I have a product background. Yes, I have a marketing background, but I can't just rely on that. I've not been in that space in the big way. You have to continually do this in order to make sure that it is fresh and that it's current and that it reflects how the market really is today. I love your comment too about specificity. I think there's always a desire to write like everyone will love it, but we all know that doesn't really work. But then I think the challenge comes when I have the more specific I am about who it's for and what it's about, the more important it is to get in front of that particular audience too, right? I can't mass send it out because then I'm not getting to the specific person. So I think after we think about, okay, so I've got great content, the next question is, particularly I think with a new product or a new vertical you're trying to get out, maybe you're expanding into a new target audience, how do I get the content in front of them?
I think this is the hot question, or based on my discovery with the market right now, this is what people are interested in most, which is what's cool about the interest around it. And I'm going to answer your question. I'll hit it head on. But what's cool about this is that people are not comfortable anymore. And I'm finding that with marketers where I'm not going to keep writing these blog posts and just publish one. Hopefully Google does its thing. Hopefully the inbound things all work and hopefully people find us and on to the next one. And it's this content factory mentality that we grow into because it becomes second nature. What I'm finding is that people have a desire to do more. They're going to do the inbound thing and they're going to rely on it for audience growth and new visitors and new eyeballs to the website. But it's also being proactive with your content. So how do you be proactive with your content? The way to be proactive with your content is to think about distribution. So when I think about distribution, I think about, okay, if the content that I am building on a regular basis is for content marketers and for VPs of marketing or their boss, how do I ensure and make sure that the people who I want to see from those accounts, the individuals, how do I make sure that I'm getting the content in front of the right people? And the way I've gone about it is what are your channels? Where do the people hang out to learn when you're not in the room? Like, what are those channels? So a lot of people would say LinkedIn. A lot of people would say Twitter. Those are great channels. Be a part of the conversation. Don't start just pushing your content. It's more effective if you listen first, reply to other people, comment, build that rapport, build those relationships on those social media platforms, and then start sharing your content. It's incredible what happens when you start first with listening and engaging and then sharing. So those are the traditional social channels. But then also I think a big opportunity, what I've uncovered and what's been really good for us at the Juice is just tapping into those Slack communities where people go to learn. There are so many different niche communities across B2B. There's a community for everyone. And it's the same approach. You get in those communities. Typically, my process is what I like to do is I like to introduce myself to whoever's running these communities and just let them know like who I am, what I do. And I say like, if you have an opportunity for sponsorship or if you're looking for support in this community, let me know. I'd love to we're early stage. I'd love to get the Juice brand in front of these people. If not, no worries. But then also that's where I start engaging. I start having conversations and then I start sharing content. You build those relationships in real time, and content really is the glue for those relationships. And then what happens from that? You meet people, then we've got a podcast and you know these people are experts in certain topics. So you invite them to be on your show. Then all of a sudden, content is really transforming the business from a perspective. It's not just about getting people inbound. It's not just about getting leads, but you're creating relationships. You're establishing, social proof. People, they're going to tell their friends about those interactions. And so it all really starts with distribution. So instead of just like hitting publish and then moving on to the next one, I think we all as marketers should spend more time thinking about how do we maximize all of that energy we just put in the post to make sure the people we actually want to see our posts and it applies for, make sure we're getting in those places and getting in front of that group.
I like a lot of what you just said there. I think it's really a good way of putting it too. I think a lot of people think of content as a broadcast medium, for lack of a better word, right? Like I put a blog post and I push it out. But that's lovely if you have a whole bunch of people standing there waiting to listen. But why, if particularly again early on, why should I listen to you? It's partly because you listened to me and you showed credibility. And so you can't really skip those steps. And I think the other thing that people need to remember, and it's hard sometimes, you can't buy yourself around those steps, right? Like you can't, I'm just going to go spend a bunch on Google ads and we'll skip ahead to the part where they trust me and love me and come here. And you really do need to do the work. And that's exactly what it is. It's the work to find out where they are and to have real conversations with them where you are listening and you're providing value because that's the value they need, not necessarily because that's the value that you can deliver that will definitely go to the next step and close the process.
I'm going to call myself out on this and say, I thought I was doing this a few years ago when my boss would say to me, hey, we've got some extra marketing budget for the quarter. We need it spent in the next 3 weeks. Like that's a dream scenario for the marketer. Oh, wow. Extra budget. Let me go use this. Well, what would I do? Wasn't thinking about distribution. I was thinking more of quantity over quality. And what I would do is I'd call content syndication up, say, hey, I've got 10K extra. I've got this piece of content, go promote it. Well, then what would happen? At the end of the week, we'd get a CSV file full of names, would upload them in our CRM. And I'd say, wow, I hit my lead total for the quarter. Sales, have fun with these leads, on to the next. And to me, I thought I was doing content distribution, but I really wasn't. It was a transactional mindset that I had. So I think for me, what's the difference between distribution and something like syndication? With distribution, you're not focusing on the quantity and volume metrics. You're really focusing on the quality. And so I think to get into this mindset and to actually push forward with distribution, you really have to change the mindset. And maybe it's a culture shift internally around the numbers and the metrics and what you're actually trying to do. Because yes, we need more. Your boss, the board, everyone always wants more, but dig into that. What is more really getting you? If you spent more time doing distribution and the leads were fewer, but the quality was up, what does that actually mean to pipeline and your business goals? So I've been on both sides and I'm feeling a little transformed now. I'm in this world of distribution, but I know it's difficult and it's a culture shift internally.
So I hear lots of people in my ear by our listeners thinking, oh, this totally makes sense, but I don't have time for this. Brett, how do I find time to research these, engage in the conversations? How can I do this at scale?
Yeah. So I would start with, don't try to do it at scale at first. Test one channel. Where is the channel that your audience goes to learn the individual, the role, whoever you're trying to reach? Where is the main channel, the platform that they go to learn, to connect with other individuals, and find a way and to start there. Block your calendar off, dedicate time each week to going into that community and just providing value, introducing yourself, providing value, answering, being a part of the conversation. There are literally Slack communities for everything. So I would start there. And if you can't do that, then this strategy probably isn't going to be for you. This takes some time. This takes establishing, but what will happen not only for your brand, but for you personally, you will begin to build your individual brand around this space. And people buy from people. People want to learn from people. So you are your brand's number one distribution channel. And by doing this, people will start to associate your brand, who you are and what you do, with the brand you work for. And that's really, really good for your brand, because when they have a problem and your product solves it, they're going to turn to you. And how cool is that as a content person, a content marketer, to say, hey, sales rep, I met this individual in this Slack community, and they're interested in learning more about our product. And you're facilitating that conversation inside of the organization because trust has been established, and that started in a Slack community, in Twitter DMs, on LinkedIn. So that would be my challenge, push back to the group. If you don't have time for it, it's probably not for you. But if you're interested in it, dedicate time and make it a part of your plan.
But I love that, like, you just have to start with one. I think often too, we think it'll be our new strategy, and we go like from 0 to like 100 in our mind. And then I'm like, but we can't get all the way to 100. Never mind. And you're like, no, we can do this. I mean, a lot of people do that with ABM too, right? Where they're like,
yes,
start one step at a time. The other thing I think about this, just from a purely selfish perspective, right? Think of how the credibility of yourself within your organization rises as you become sort of the voice of that, right? And the powerful way that allows you to build credibility, not just in the market, but internally. And also the listening you do to establish that relationship is going to provide such amazing feedback and perspective as well. So it really has selfish advantages at a personal level, as well as for the product and the company.
100%. I love how you call that out. We've had examples at the Juice where meeting people organically, having podcast conversations like this, staying in touch with people have come back around and raised their hand and say, you know what, like, I think we've been talking about things that the Juice does, and I'd be interested in learning more. And me making that connection, and then those individuals becoming our customers. And it all started on Twitter. Like to think about that all the way through. And it's like stuff like that's not necessarily scalable, but it's just like putting in the reps and sets and building relationships, creating content, collaborating, doing it the right way. Things come around, and you've earned the trust, and that's when kind of some magic happens. So yeah, I love how you called that out, because I think being that individual at your brand who can be the focal point and the central point, where you're not only creating content, you're not only distributing content, but then people are coming to you to learn more about your product, what your product can do, really just shows you the power of content.
Yeah. And like you also said, having those conversations just gives you a stream of content collaborators and contributors, like good podcast guests or people who want to create guest blogs or any of that. Like that in and of itself also is, you can think about the time it will take you to do this, but also think of the way it would accelerate some of the other part that you're already doing. So you're out, pounding the pavement to find content contributors, spend that effort here, and they'll come back to you a little bit more naturally. So there's always a little bit of a give and take.
100%. And I would say that the more that you can focus in on your macro, we have branded it modern day marketer. And that the modern day marketer is the brand marketer. It's someone who's brand focused, is a collaborator, values their audience first, experience, a bunch of these things that are being talked about right now in B2B that maybe weren't talked about 5 years ago. And so when we use modern day marketer, we want our audience and people to think about the things that the Juice is talking about are these traits that make up who I am and what I do. And so that's we found that the more we lean into the brand of the individual that we're trying to go after, the more the interest comes back to us on people that say, you know what, like I've got a cool modern day marketing topic that I'm working on. Like, I think it would be good for a conversation on the show. And then it starts to snowball. So I would say, like, be focused in on what your macro topic is. And because you want that macro topic to be a magnet, not only for collaborators, but future customers of your brand.
So having from macro topic, sort of a kind of larger umbrella point of view of which they can find their spot, not too specific where it's like, do you do this, but wide enough where they know this is the point of view, this is the brand, the personality, the focus of the Juice, and they can kind of find their connection to it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's calling out the topic, and then the hero in the story, which is the modern day marketer. Then underneath it, here are the traits that make up this individual from the Juice point of view. And here are the traits. So let's start creating content around the traits. And then you have individuals in market who identify. They might not identify with all the traits, which is totally cool. It might be 2 or 3, but that's enough for them to want to hop on a podcast to riff about how they're doing X, Y, or Z for their brand. And I think it took us a first turn. We did a turn, and it took us a turn. But once we turned into that modern day marketing message, that's when people started coming to us and wanting to explore the topic further.
Yeah. One of the things, Brett, you've said several times just by giving your examples is how important it is for us as marketers to try things and to recognize that they won't always succeed, but be okay with that, right? Like you've talked about, I did this, that didn't work. We did this, and then we learned this, and like, but that's not, to me, that is the sign of a very strong marketer and not a weak one, right? If nothing we try fails, we're certainly not trying enough. And it is those evolutions and it's the iterations that help us get stronger and stronger.
I have failed more than I've been successful.
You get t-shirts.
100%. I literally I went to my team yesterday in our go-to-market meeting, and I talked about something we launched, and I came to we've done it a couple times. The first time, knocked it out of the park. The second time was a little different, and we knew it was different coming in, but just the results weren't where we wanted them. And so I came to the table and said, hey, this is on me. This is it. This wasn't great, but I think we learned something. What do you think? And internally, okay, yes. And we're having that conversation, and less than 24 hours later, we're already planning, how do we save ourselves time from doing some of the things that didn't really have any impact on that? And how do we streamline this process based on some things we already have? And that all came because we admitted that it didn't work, and we didn't try to double down and do it again. So it's taken me a decade plus in B2B marketing to realize that being vulnerable actually is a superpower, and admitting the mistakes is actually a superpower. And the more you do that, the quicker you are to finding the right answers. And I always view marketing as one big experiment anyway. You're not going to win all the time. It's very rare that you do.
Yeah. I think you said something else smart there that I know, if I was going to follow one of my own swords, I am very good at trying new things. I'm a big believer in that. We need more discipline about stopping things, right? About recognizing that it doesn't mean it will never work. It doesn't mean it's not possible somewhere else, but it's not a good fit for us right now. We should stop that. That's an important part because it also enables you to have the energy for the new ones. But it's a hard one for everybody. I think
it is. And I think I've learned that, like, transitioning to different companies in different industries and different verticals, I've shared that I've worked in a lot of different types of spots. What you're running at one company is not transferable to the next company. You got to take the time once you get there to do your assessment and have conversations and then see what applies. I learned that early, is like trying to transfer over from one company to the other. Oh, this playbook's going to work. It doesn't work like that. But I think so often marketing, we think that these things are transferable, and it's better off to just start fresh, clean slate, act like it's your first year of marketing, and just be very, very curious and start having a bunch of conversations.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Brett, we talked about lots of different things today. If you were going to have our listeners do 2 things differently tomorrow based on what we talked about today, what would you do?
I would say the most important thing I think we can all be doing as marketers when we are creating content is be authentic and be yourself. Build your personal brand in the content that you're creating. That is going to be it's never quick to resonate, but that is your quickest path to resonate. People want to learn from human beings. So our opportunity, with there being so many different competitors, so many different types of companies who do the same thing that we do, don't focus in on your features or functionality. Focus in on you as the individual and your experience, and educate your audience along the way. That would be the first piece. I think the second piece would be, the way marketing is moving is going to be more and more about focusing in and understanding distribution and the content that we're receiving as a consumer and the content that we're producing as a creator. So whether you think it's hard, whether you think it's not for you, I would strongly recommend, I'm going to throw a name out there and have you follow this individual, because I've learned so much from him, and I would consider him the leader in content distribution. Go follow Ross Simmons on Twitter. He's the CEO of Foundation, but this guy is an expert in content distribution. I've learned a ton from following him on Twitter, listening to his podcast, watching him on YouTube, but go find those individuals who have been there, done that. And he is the one guy right now talking about content distribution. There will, in the next year or two, there will be a lot more, but Ross has been there from the beginning. So go find those people and learn from them. They're sharing their secrets and information out in public, and it's on us as the marketers to go learn from those people.
Awesome. All right, Brett, It was really a great time to have you on today. Thank you so much for coming in and talking about your experience and your insights. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I had a blast.
All right, that does it for today's episode. Thanks everyone for listening. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, your company, and your career.